Hi, and welcome to me reading my silly little book. This will be the first book in the Afterlife series called Artifacts. Before we begin, I just wanted to lay out some acknowledgments and a disclaimer. The acknowledgement being that I got the idea to record myself reading my chapters from a YouTuber and Wattpad writer called Stories by Sarah Danielle. She attached audio files of herself reading her chapters to her story called Forsaken by Shadows. So check her out. She's the inspiration as to why I'm reading my chapters right now. The disclaimer: this story is set in the Planescape setting of Dungeons and Dragons. It also borrows some of the gods, the demi-human deities, from Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons is owned by Wizards of the Coast, so therefore those things are not owned by me. This is thus unofficial fan content and is not endorsed by Wizards of the Coast. This should be allowed under the fan content policy, as I do not intend to make money off of this. This is not for commercial purposes. So, now that we have our acknowledgments and our disclaimer out of the way, let's begin. This is going to be part 1 of chapter 1. Part 1: The Blood Hills. Chapter 1: Run. The sound of an arrow flying through the air ripped her, gasping, up to the surface of the soundless ocean. The fog lifted from her eyes, revealing the ancient forest all around her. Of course, this place. It looked almost identical to how she remembered it. Whip thunk! An arrow sank into the tree trunk to her left. She blinked, watching the fletching wobble up and down. Black arrows. Black. The elf sprang, scrambling to her feet. No longer was she floating in that ethereal underwater dream. She tore off deeper into the forest. Hoo-thwack! Another arrow struck into the roots near her feet. She dove away from the whoosh of wind. She fell face first into the leaf litter. The pounding of feet vibrated the ground beneath her. The baying of hounds came to her ears. Run. She pushed herself up with a grunt. This is what you were afraid of, she told herself. Run. She zigzagged up and down over the hills of gnarled tree roots. They will hunt you. No matter how fast you run, they will catch you. She slid down an eroded embankment, skidding to a stop at the bottom. This is their realm, and you are not welcome to it. The elven woman took a second to evaluate the steepness of the other side. She gritted her teeth and jumped, crawling up the slope. She hurled herself up, pausing for just a moment. Another arrow skittered to the edge of the embankment. It tumbled to the bottom where she had just been. Run. She ran straight for a while before veering sharply to one side. You are not welcome here. Not welcome to their forests, nor their feast halls. The wind howled cold through her thin robe. Not to their crystal waters, sparkling and clear, nor their russet twilight rays sprayed through canopies of autumn leaves. She leapt deftly over a decaying tree trunk. Not to their ethereal lightness untainted, nor their mellifluous sleep song that travels on the ether under glittering stars. Their ancient magics, and the shining golden souls their halls hold. Her vision blurred. All are things you will never grasp, never taste, never see, ever again. Tears streamed down her face as she ran. The bramble and coniferous brush lashed at her legs. You relinquished this place when you made your choice. Run. They will not forgive you. You cannot even forgive yourself. If you wanted empathy, you could not have chosen to lay amongst the gods. She looked back. Run as fast as feet will fall. Do not stop. The black arrows continued to sing past her face. Fluk, flack, ping! Do not look back. The hounds are close behind, but when did Chevroche start using hounds? Twing, flack, thunk! Run. Don't let their destruction be in vain. Run. Don't let the pain overtake you. Run. Don't think, just run. The woman stumbled. She fell to the dirt once again. The pale morning sun was cresting over the rocky, moss-covered hill. Forest edge! She scrambled over the rocks, standing and slipping and standing again. A few rocks crumbled behind her. I see it! I'm almost there. She grabbed a tree root and wound it around her forearm, pulling herself up where the hill was steepest. However, the forest edge was both a blessing and a curse, for in the forest, there was cover. She climbed her way on hands and knees to the top of the hill. Outside the forest was unknown. Without looking back, she leapt into the bright, glaring dawn, fleeing from those who hunted her. She skipped over the rocks and uneven ground, darted amongst the thinning trees as forest turned to open grassland. She laughed to herself, forgetting for a moment the terror of the situation. A lurch of weightlessness pulled her from her childlike thrill. She flailed her arms in a wild windmill pattern, propelling herself backwards, and caught herself before falling head over heels down the escarpment. She landed hard on her butt. The elf's eyes scanned the cliffline. It was steep. There was a lush forest below. A river disappeared into the thick vegetation. She followed the river up to her left. The sound of running water came to her ears. She smiled. Steep meant difficult. She bit her lip, an idea taking shape in her mind. Andraste hopped to her feet and raced along the edge of the cliff. She called forth her shield and held it to the forest just in case she met any more black arrows. The woman saw the mouth of the river. It was fast and winding and rough. She placed her shield in the water and jumped. She tried hard not to give out a yelp of excitement as she careened down the river. The waters jostled her back and forth. A few yards down, the rapids hurled her into the air. She laughed and leaned sideways to stay on the river's course. She landed with a bang. The waters spun the shield around and around as they raced through the cliffs of Arborea. In the dizzying chaos, the woman let out a shriek of glee. The river sent her flying again as she spiraled in the air. The shield landed in the water with a reckless slant to one side. It pitched to the other side with just as much spirit. She clung to it in a combination of terror and delight to the lurching disc, laughing and crying all the way. Before her, she could see the expanse of dark green forest beside misty blue mountains. The river dropped a bit more suddenly. The combination of momentum from the rapids and drop of the riverbed sent her flying a little longer. Beyond that ran a flat expanse of periwinkle-dotted meadows. It was almost peaceful in flight, until her shield came clattering down. Her hand slipped. She lost her grip. The rushing water flung her to the side. She fell on her hip. The shield flipped over and flipped her over with it. She kept one hand on the shield as she was plunged into the icy river. The whirling squalls buffeted her amongst the rocks. Her raven-haired head broke through the water with a gasp. She disappeared the shield and dropped below the water's surface again. The dogs would have a hard time scenting her now. Beyond that, the river could outrun them. Andraste floated down the rushing, rabid river. Only her eyes peeked above the white foam. Up ahead, she could see taller and whiter and louder squalls, screaming. She reappeared her shield and pulled herself up onto it to ride out the whirlpools more safely. The shield rolled over the crashing waves. The tumultuous water sprayed on her face. It was both invigorating and meditative, the rocking and the levity of being thrust into the air. Andraste came around one of the bends in the river. The turn flung her into the air yet again. She tilted to the side to control her trajectory, but the tilt was not quite right. She landed on a rock that clattered the shield catawampus. The vibration sent a chill through the elven woman as the force seemed to ring through her entire being. The shield hit another rock and tossed the shield and its rider spinning onto the banks. Andraste blinked. Her vision was full of swirling, cacophonous colors. Shivers echoed through her. Her stomach sloshed in similar rhythm to the pitching and rolling of the shield on the river. She was soaking wet. The woman rolled on her back and stared up at the clear blue sky. She laughed. Slowly at first, quietly, then with all the boisterousness of a drunk dwarven god, or Bacchus with a full stomach of acid tabs and wine. The howl of a dog was heard growing closer from atop the cliff. Andraste grabbed the dinged shield and made off deeper into the dark forest. The forest was beset by an uneasy stillness. As Andraste's vision righted, she noticed that the forest was not dark green, just dark. The trees were black, as if charred by fire and packed together tightly. Fallen branches crossed and knotted together in net-like patterns, giving the space a feeling of claustrophobia. It was almost suffocating, especially with the air so still. Her feet crunched through charcoal black leaves. They had an unnatural sheen to them, like they were covered in oil or ichor. She swallowed as the sound of her footfall echoed amongst the blackened tree trunks. Andraste tried to squeeze her way through the scrub. As she ventured further into the forest, the trees grew thicker. She maneuvered her way through a thicket of the black spindly trees. Their dry twigs caught in her hair and on her clothes. As she stepped out from between the saplings, her head was yanked back. She was stuck on something. Andraste felt around blindly, trying to find where the trees held her. She growled and flung her hand to summon something. However, before the sword materialized in her hand, a band of around 20 spiders began making their way down the tree and onto her hair and hand that held it. Andraste felt the light gossamer caresses of little spider legs along her skin and shook violently, jumping and flailing about. She ripped herself from the trees and shook off the creepy crawlies, smacking her arms as she fled. She knocked into a tree, sending some branches crashing to the ground. No birds flew up, startled by the sound. Not even in the distance. It was silent. She swore under her breath, "Fucking evil woods." Andraste looked behind her. Strands of her hair waved gently in the wind. But there was no wind. Andraste swallowed and looked around her, summoning her sword. She should find the river again. This place was not a place she wanted to stay long, hunted or not. Her shoulders slumped slightly, though, to be honest, she wasn't sure who she liked her chances with more. Andraste surveyed the area for a moment, trying to orient herself, trying to listen for the sound of water. Surely she had not run so far. She was out of earshot from the river. But who knows the power of this place to make you see things, hear things, do things you might not ever do? Andraste scowled and kept moving, in a direction she guessed was toward the river. Andraste gazed up towards the canopy of the forest. Little light made it to the forest floor, even though no leaves clung to the trees anymore. The branches laced together so tightly there was little space through which light could peek. She stood on tiptoe, trying and failing to get much more height. Where's the forest I came from? Where's the cliff? She sighed, falling back to her heels. Now I'm really lost. She stood still, trying to hear any sound from the hunters. Barking, rustling, anything. If her footsteps reverberated through the forest so intensely, surely she'd hear the bark of dogs, or their running. It was silent. She looked around again. She'd seen no sign of anyone, or anything, for almost 2 hours. Or what she guessed was 2 hours. At least no one is hunting me here, right? She slumped down against a tree and looked herself over, starting at the ankles. Good news. No arrows hit their mark. Just a few scrapes from the brush. She licked her thumb and tried to clean a mark off her skin. Well, that's weird. She turned her leg towards her to get a better look. Since when did she have green in her skin? She brushed the dirt and mud from her leg. It looks like a tattoo. But I never had tattoos. Did I? How? Draste looked up and saw the ghostly figure of a woman floating quickly toward her. She jumped up. It saw her, so there was no use running, though fighting it would certainly alert those hunting her to her location. Andraste ran up to the white figure and took a swing with her sword. The creature let out a sickening wail. Andraste covered her ears, fighting the pounding in her head and blurring of her vision. She opened her eye and swung at the creature with one hand on her head. She hit it, but barely. Feeling empowered by the hit, nonetheless, Andraste shook her hand from her head and swung at the banshee once again. She dug her heels into the ground and swung upwards and caught the spirit on the arm. The banshee was surprised. Andraste grinned and swung again, down at the ghost's neck. She caught the wraith squarely in the neck, cutting halfway through. It looked at its wound as black ooze spilled out and lashed out with a hiss. Andraste dodged out of the way deftly. Her movement allowed her to get a jump on the banshee, and she took another series of swings. Each one connected, and the wraith fell closer to the ground. The spirit disintegrated at her feet with a wail. This time, one of sadness. Andraste blinked and looked around. Stillness. Silence. Coldness. No sound. No movement. No nothing. Andraste looked at the sword she held. She laid it flat across her hands. This sword wasn't hers. Was it? It had the look of something not of elven design. But neither was it dwarven. Human, perhaps? The grip was wrapped in purple and blue leather, with cobalt, gold, silver, and nickel inlays all along the hilt. Iridescent etchings along the blade were in a script she could not make out. Is it Elvish? It looks like... As she was inspecting the blade, she heard rustling reverberating through the dead forest. Shit. Maybe they are hunting me this far. Where was I headed again? Which direction? Andraste looked around. The banshee was there, so I should go this way. She turned in the direction she had been heading. The sound of barking came from straight ahead of her, and it was getting closer. Fast. Andraste turned and fled. What kind of idiot followed me into this hellhole? Do they have a death wish? This place is creepy as hell. Her pace slowed as tears crept into her eyes and a thought into her mind. They must really hate me. The tears brimmed up in her eyes, threatening to overflow. Must really want me dead. At this thought, she sped up, squeezing the tears out of her eyes and shaking her head clear. But a thought entered her mind after a few yards of sprinting. What if I stop? She slowed again. If he finds me... She stopped. Will it be as easy as an arrow to the heart? She turned to look back. Her eyes widened in terror. Behind her was a trail of orange and red dots. Against her better judgment, which was hit or miss anyway, she strode over to inspect one of the dots. A leaf. A red autumn leaf. The same shape as the ones around it that were covered in years of black oil. Was this a sign? Was she heading in the right direction? How had she not noticed this before? She heard the rustling again. Andraste grabbed the leaf and sprang back to her run, wiping the last of her tears from her eyes and flinging them off her hand. Unbeknownst to her, the tears dripped down the curves of a few leaves. These leaves turned color, one to yellow and another to orange.